Hello, friends. This is John Morgan coming to you from Dallas, Texas. And it's good to be with you here at the Graduate Employability Summit. And with this year's theme of the future of work and wealth creation. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank the organizations that are hosting the summit, especially to Daystar University and Africa Transition Hub. So I have been given the assignment of speaking to you on the topic of wealth creation, and I've got about 20 minutes to do that in. This is a subject I talk about a lot. I've researched a lot. I've written about it. And yeah, would have a lot of things I'd like to tell you, but I want to focus in on what is the most important thing I can tell you about wealth creation. And it also has to do with being employable as a graduate. And that is this: people who create wealth have a different attitude than everybody else. They have what I call the spirit of creation. They constantly live with this question of how can they create the best value that they can. They're constantly asking, what problem can I solve? They're constantly asking, how can I provide what people need and want? They constantly ask, how can I apply my talents and my interests and create what people will pay for? So when they get a job, they go in with that spirit that I'm looking, my head is up and my eyes are up. I'm looking around. What needs to be done? What problem needs to be solved? How can I create the best value that I can? They go in with the spirit of a Joseph. Do you remember Joseph? The story of Joseph from the Bible? Joseph in the Bible was sold into slavery by his older brothers, and the slave traders took him to Egypt, where they sold him there. And he was sold to Potiphar, who was the captain of Pharaoh's guard. And he started out at the bottom, working dirty jobs in Potiphar's house. But he did such a good job. He was a problem solver. He was a value creator. He did such a good job that in a pretty short time, Potiphar kept promoting him up and up and up till finally he ran everything in his household. Then one day, Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, but he refused her. And she was very angry about it. And she falsely accused him of trying to attack her. And so Potiphar threw him into jail. So here he goes from, one situation that wasn't super good to now he's in prison. And in prison, he begins working in prison and trying to figure out, okay, what problems can I solve here? How do I create value here? How do I make this jail life? How do I make it a better world here? And so he goes to work and he starts doing that. And the Bible says that he worked his way up to where he became the guy who was running the prison. He was the prisoner in charge of running the prison. And then through a series of events, Pharaoh had a really big problem, and somebody said, "Hey, there's a guy down there in the prison who might be able to help you out." And sure enough, he goes and talks to Pharaoh, and God gives him the answer. And Pharaoh says, "You know what? I think you need to be in charge of our economy here." And so he saved Egypt from this massive famine. He saved thousands of people in the region, including his family, and he created tremendous wealth for the pharaohs of Egypt. So he just went in with this spirit of, how do I make it better? What problem can I solve? How can I create value? So I was challenged with this when I was young. My dad challenged me with it. I heard a number of people who talked about having this kind of a spirit, and man, it sets you apart, and it will really change your life. So I grew up with that attitude. That's what I'm going to do. When I get into a job, I'm going to go in with the best attitude that I can. I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm going to fix the best problems that I can, and create the most value that I can. So when I was a young man, I did a lot of dirty jobs, but I was willing to just jump in and start at the bottom and work my way up. So I worked in construction. I've done almost everything you can do in construction. Probably what I ended up doing the most was laying concrete, which that's hard, dirty work. I contracted concrete jobs for a period of time when I was in my college years, and but I just went in and I hustled and I just tried to do the best job that I could. I worked in restaurants. I worked in oil and gas. I was working on a offshore drilling rig, which is, they drill for well from these rigs out in the middle of the ocean, and you live on a rig for a couple of weeks at a time when you're out there doing that kind of work. And when I went out to work out there, I didn't have any kind of fancy job. I mean, I started at the bottom. I was with a couple of guys that basically we cleaned and repaired anything that was dirty or broken on that drilling rig. And one day the pump, the sewer pump that pumped the sewer that came straight from the toilets in the bathrooms and went into a holding tank, and then these pumps would pump it over the side of the rig into a bigger holding tank. One day the pump broke, and they needed somebody who would go inside and unbolt that pump and put on the new one. And so we're all standing around, and the foreman goes, "All right, who's going to go in there and do it?" And my friend and I, we kind of, we flipped a coin for it to see who was going to go, and I lost. So he held the flashlight, and I held my breath and went in and would stick my head up out of the hole every now and then, get some fresh air, and go back in and undo the bolts, and then put the new bolts back on. So, look, that's not where I am today. Today, I run an organization. I'm the founder of an organization that works at solving poverty globally. We're working in 6 countries in East Africa, 2 countries in West Africa. We're in Asia and in Latin America in the work that we do. And I also work for a private equity firm. And what private equity firms do is we buy businesses, we grow them, and then we sell them for a profit. So God has blessed me, and I've been able to rise in my work, in my career, in what I do, and to be able to create some wealth. But that's not where I started. I started out at the bottom. I started out in some of the worst jobs you can imagine, but going into them with this attitude of how can I create the best value that I can. So people who create value have a different attitude than most people. They go into everything that they're doing with the spirit of creation, with the question of how can I create the best value that I can. So a couple of years ago, I was working with the fellows from Africa Transition Hub, Jeffrey Farizi and Moses Gichuho, and they had lined up a conference, a training day at Mount Kenya University, and so we had a big room packed full of people. We spent the morning doing some training, and we had some discussion time, some feedback time. And there was a young lady. She was a senior at Mount Kenya University. She was getting her degree in business, and she told her story. And she said, when I was a sophomore, I got my license to be a hairstylist, and so I started doing women's hair from out of my home when I was a sophomore. And then she said, I really tried to be good at it. And by word of mouth, my customers would tell other people. They'd see their hair, but wow, I love your hair. Who did that? And so by word of mouth, her business began to grow and grow. And she had all the business that she could handle and also go to school at the same time. And so by the time she was a junior at Mount Kenya, she hired a friend of hers who also got her license to do hair. And now between she and her friend, they are again doing all the customers that they can do and still go to school. And then by her senior year, they had enough business that they moved out to an actual storefront to open a salon, and business was doing great. And so she was now a senior, and while she's a senior and while their business is growing, a bank comes to her and says, "Hey, do you want to expand your business? Because if you want to expand your business, we'd like to give you a loan." That's amazing, because I mean, most people that want loans for a business or whatever they're going to do, they have to go beg the bank. and bend over backwards trying to prove to them that they're, they're worth lending money to. Now they had the bank coming to them saying, "Hey, if you need a loan, let us know because we'd like to work with you on that." But what was that? What was that about? That was about a person who has the spirit of creation and it's just saying, "Hey, what problem can I solve? How do I use my interests and my talents and do the best job that I can and create some value?" So I mentioned the guys at Africa Transition Hub, Jeffrey and Moses. I met those guys in 2020. And when I met them, they were both had their college educations, really smart guys, very talented guys, but they couldn't find a job. And so they heard me in a conference doing some of the training that we do and talking about how do you create wealth and what are the principles of it. And man, they really caught a vision from that. And their vision was they want to take our content as well as some other content that they were researching and that they were developing and putting together to really do what this conference is about, which is to help college graduates make that transition, to make the bridge across from education to employment or successful entrepreneurship. And they have become subject matter experts in it now. And man, they have done tons of lessons, tons of conferences, tons of courses now in different universities and university groups as they are growing their business. They have just written a book that they're getting ready to launch on this. I'm teaching a lesson with them in a full course that's being offered at Daystar University. They're offering one in the fall and then one next spring. They're getting more and more interest, and they've got this vision of leading 1 million young people in Africa from college life into successful employment or entrepreneurship. They also have a couple of side hustles that they're doing to just keep enough money coming in. And but these guys, they just live with the spirit of how do we create the best value that we can. And man, they're gonna do big things. They're gonna do big things in Kenya. They already are, and they're gonna be doing big things in Africa. So when you when you're thinking about, okay, what makes me the most employable, this is it. If you go in it with a spirit of creation, you're going to go in and they're going to realize really quickly that you're not the kind of person that just kind of waits around like, okay, I'm waiting for you to tell me what to do. And then once you tell me what to do, I'm not going to do anything else until you tell me the next thing that I need to do. I mean, that's a very passive spirit. And a lot of people have that spirit. In fact, some people feel like, the kind of job that I'm looking for is I'm looking for a job that's easy. I'm looking for a job where I don't have to think very much. I'm looking for a job where I don't have to learn very much. I don't want to have to put out too much effort. Just a lot of people think, hey, my ideal job would be, I can get hired and I can do enough that I don't get fired. And it just it's not too much stress and I can pretty much do the same thing over and over and over and I just kind of get into a rhythm and it's not too difficult. Those kind of people do not create wealth. They never have and they never will. The people who create wealth have a different attitude than most of the people because most people don't create wealth. And their attitude is what I would call the spirit of creation. They constantly are asking themselves, how can I create the best value that I can? So I want to encourage you to go forth with the spirit of creation, and I want to encourage you to go forth and conquer.